Okay, good morning to everybody tuning in from North America. Good afternoon to those of you in Europe, and good evening to those of you in the starting to be the evening in the Middle East, India, and very late in. I know we have some people tuning in from Jakarta, Indonesia, on Facebook. So thank you for taking the time to join in. It's great to be here on this Friday on the Packard Network live streaming. I have a very special guest, somebody that I'm and why she's on the program here. But we have Ciara Lynn Hunter, who lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, and joining us live here. And we're going to talk a lot about self-care, about burnout, about there's a lot of things that people can do with the stresses in today's world that they may or may not be aware of. And so we're going to kind of highlight some of those and, in the conversation. We're live to LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So please do tee up your questions in the comments section, and the two of us will certainly be able to address all of those over the course of this discussion. So just briefly before we get into it, Ciara Lynn is the founder of Living Our Finest Skin, which provides self-care, self-love coaching services to ambitious women. That's really the target here. She also works as an auditor and an adjunct accounting professor, and has a passion for helping single women find fulfillment beyond the office. So if you talk about a diverse set of purpose and missions, this is the woman to talk to right here. So yeah, she's very busy, and I'm very fortunate, and I feel very lucky to have been able to grab some of her time so that I can present her to my global network and her global network as well. So we'll talk a bit about what she's doing, but she's had 10 years plus working in the accounting industry, so more than a decade with that. She's great with numbers. She knows the rules. She has a bachelor and master's in accounting. She's a CPA, certified public accountant for those of you overseas, certified fraud examiner as well. And that also is something that is emerging on the landscape as well. I've had to deal with that in my banking career, but fraud is something that's very important. So all of you should know that about her as well. She knows what it takes to go after an ambitious career, to seek aggressive business goals, to identify what you want to do with a career, and then go after it and get it. And she has a wonderful attitude. She knows how to capture the mind and the heart of people. She did that with me last year after a very short meeting. We met online. She's incredibly bright. I would have loved to have had her on the program immediately, but we were kind of backed up on the booking. So this is the earliest possible time. So I'm very proud to have Ciara Lynn, you on the program today. So thanks very much. After that long introduction, I'll catch my breath here. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Brad. That was a wonderful introduction.
Yeah,
I'm so honored. And thank you so much for having me. And like you said, we briefly met online, and we've just kind of developed a relationship from there. And you are so inspiring. You're a thought leader, and I'm so honored to be here. I really am.
Well, thank you for your kind words. It's terrific. And every day when I see you, your postings, whatever, it's just a breath of fresh air. And it gives me, I kind of look at my day when I see the stuff that you write about and use that as kind of a checkpoint, because we all require maintenance, self-maintenance or help from somebody else as we go through, the trials and tribulations of life and that type of thing. I'm just curious, Ciara Lynn, you do a lot of things, right? I won't repeat them all, but everything from accounting, numbers, rules, all of this stuff to a self-love coach. How did you briefly take a minute or two, talk about how you wound up right here? Did you plan it, or did it just kind of fall in your lap, or what?
No,
How,
I
how
hit a
did how did it
wall.
happen?
I hit a wall is what happened.
Okay. Well,
So
why don't we
here's
start? Why don't you tell us about that wall? I've hit a lot of them myself too.
yeah.
So.
So what happened was, like you said, I've always been very ambitious. I started out, working on my bachelor's, going from being an intern in school with the government to transitioning to full-time work and eventually landing in auditing in the government industry. And, I just kind of hit the ground running. I was like, okay, let me work on my master's. Let me earn my certifications, like you said, my CPA license and all that stuff. And I was just going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And while or I should say in that process, I just I kind of went in autopilot a little bit. I recognized when I hit the wall that, okay, I looked around, I was like, okay, there's nothing left to do. I wanted to start teaching, I was teaching. I wanted to be a CPA, I was a CPA. I wanted to, be a forensic auditor, and I'm working in that space. And so I was in my dream job, in both dream jobs at that. And so I looked and I was like, okay, there's nothing left to do. And it was quiet for like probably the first time in my adult life. It was quiet. And I looked around and I was just like, okay, wait, what do I do now? What's left, and it was just a very uncomfortable space to be in because I had been going for so long. And long story short, when I hit that wall and kind of had the quietness and the space to just digest what had been happening and what I was doing and all that stuff, I recognized while I was super ambitious about pursuing my passions in my career, I had kind of neglected my personal wellness in the process. I wasn't, doing what was necessary to keep up my mind, body, and spirit, just eating the right things, moving my body, healing from things that I didn't know were even affecting me. Even though I had accomplished a lot, there was a lot that I internally was kind of just pushing down and just kind of going about and not
Were you
dealing with
scared
them.
were you scared at all during this, or tell us how you actually felt, like emotionally?
It felt like I was lost for the first time in my life, even though I felt like for most of my life I was laser focused. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I was checking off all the things. But for the first time, I was like, I remember having conversations with friends and saying, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's wrong. Something's missing. Even though there should be nothing missing, because in my mind, I told myself, once I get here, everything will be magically great. Once I make a certain salary, once I get all of these things that I thought would, bring me into a space of happiness. It was not there. And I needed the fulfillment that I thought my jobs would give me, or my passions would give me. It wasn't enough. Like, I needed something outside of that. And that's where it kind of turned and evolved into going through that journey and going through my own self-love journey and going through those things and focusing more on my wellness and just kind of taking that time to, keep everything else up. Don't get me wrong. But also balancing that with a wellness-driven life. And once I kind of got there, I recognized that I was not alone. There were a lot of women that were in similar spaces. As I talked to friends and family, I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize, I thought it was just me. And there were a lot of people in that state. And that's where essentially Living Our Finest Skin kind of evolved into. And that's how I got into the coaching space and kind of building, starting out my business. And I'm still very much in the building stage, but
Mhm.
I just started getting on social media and trying to inspire, and here we
Yeah.
are.
Well, I tell you what, you inspire me, and you still, not only when we met, but you still do every day.
Thank
And
you.
I think you know that. I've made that quite obvious. And because, we're all different, right? And so I value, uh, that's actually how I believe anyway. That's how we grow. So, a better accountant, but you're really not an accountant in a numbers. I mean, I think we just heard that. You're really a person that helps others, focus on self-love and improving themselves. And now you just unpacked a lot of stuff here. So Ciara Lynn, my first question is, so you found your purpose. Your purpose, correct me if I've heard any of this wrong, but you we all have a purpose somewhere. Our challenge is to find it, right? And it's usually somewhere in our heart. And when we find it, we know it because it's our passion, something we deeply care about, and
Mhm.
it becomes our fuel. Did I kind of get that right? That's how you wound up in this space, that you went through, you hit this wall, and you then, because you hit the wall, you then found your passion. Am I missing anything with that?
Yes, and I would, only thing I would add is
Hmm.
it's an additional passion, because I
Okay.
can honestly say that with the, I'm a forensic auditor, and I'm very passionate about the work. Um, Teaching, I'm very passionate about that, but they're different types of passions. Whereas this,
Mm.
they're very, very different, and they fulfill me in different ways.
Mm.
But I think if kind of, I think what you're alluding to is that this was a little bit more profound passion.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do, and I kind of,
Yeah. I mean,
made
you hit a
it
wall,
happen.
right? You hit a
It,
wall.
yeah,
Yeah.
it kind of fell in my lap.
Yeah. So
And I
maybe,
just, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Maybe one of the first things, and then we'll continue with this, because this is fascinating to me. So just because you hit a wall, this for all the viewers out there, it doesn't mean that it's doom and gloom and it's just a matter of recovery. I think we just heard a story here where Ciara Lynn hit a wall, and she happened to find a passion, right? That she's now living part of that passion, right? I hit a wall early in my career. I was a university dropout, and I then went back and rectified all that. And I was fortunate that I hit that wall and hit rock bottom early in my career, and that enabled me to accelerate rapidly my career, because I'd hit that wall and knew my purpose. Same thing.
Mhm.
So we, very similar nature. So don't get down when you hit that wall, because start looking around, because you might find something in your heart, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And that's exactly what happened to me. And I would have never expected it. I thought that I was going to just, continue doing what I've always done. And,
Mm.
like you said, you go to school for accounting and then end up in this space. What?
Yeah. I mean,
It's a completely different thing. But I will
it
say,
came from your heart. Yep. Go ahead.
and
Yep.
I was just going to say, I will say that I knew very early on I wanted to make an impact. And you have these ideas in your head about what that's going to look like. But and that's why I've always liked auditing, because you are making an impact. You're
Mm.
able to make, and so that's always driven me, or kept me going, I should say, in my career. And then with teaching, of course, like just to see the light bulbs go off when you're trying to teach someone, which a lot of times is like a foreign language. Accounting is, most people don't have exposure to it until they get into school and all that. And
Mm.
so, and then just transitioning from that type of impact to now having, I think is a lot more direct impact, because you can see how someone transforms right in front of your face. And,
Mm.
and then you see your own transformation, like in my case. And I'm still transforming, by the way.
Yeah, good. Well, we all do that, and if we stop transforming, we stop living. So I think that's we get
Mm.
stale, right? So I think I'm really glad to hear that. So that's great. How long did this take to or months, or give us a
You said
sense?
what, Brett? Can you say that
When
again?
you
I'm
hit
sorry.
the wall, when you hit the
Mhm.
wall, started this self-discovery evolved. How long of a period of time elapsed
How long
between
did it
hitting the
last?
wall and finding
Okay.
finding
Um,
your passion? Yep.
so I remember this started around the end of 20. Okay, I'm not gonna name dates. So I remember it was
Don't need
right.
to. Yep.
It was right before the pandemic hit.
Okay.
Because the where the kind of the shift happened, I knew something was wrong, kind of the end of the year, and I just remember thinking like, okay, I just got to figure this out. I don't know what was going on, and you know, I was talking with friends and just actively, you know, I'm an active learner. And so, you know, I'm on Google, I'm like doing all these things and trying to figure out like what is going on. And I remember stumbling across Oprah's wellness tour that she was doing in 2020. And I was like, okay, something was like, okay, I gotta be there. You know, something was calling me to it. And I remember sitting in the stadium. I took my mom, and I remember sitting there like, oh my God, this is what the problem is. You
Wow.
have completely neglected the internal personal development. You've been all about
Mm-hmm.
professional development, but
Yep.
you know, just not really honing in on those things. And it kind of and so that was kind of like the turning point. And then I was actively seeking out anything that involved wellness, anything that, you know, just self-improvement, anything.
Mm.
And that kind of landed me into eventually coming across the self-love certification program, and you know, and various other programs and all that good stuff, and just trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure it out. And here I am, and this is
Yeah.
the thing. This is it.
What a journey fueled by purpose, and you had to find that purpose, and you, again, you've said a lot that we need to unpack here, but you know, it's interesting that you mentioned the professional part you'd mastered. You know, you're on top, you're doing well, you're living the dream and all of this, but it was really the inside part that it took really hitting the wall to discover. And I think that's true with a lot of people. And
Mhm.
so describe to us what you do specifically to help people with self-love.
Absolutely. And okay, so I think I need to start with like what self-love is, because I think that, you know, it's a
Mm.
buzzword.
Yep.
A lot of us, you know, I think it's thrown around all over the place. And I think a lot of us kind of have the idea of like, okay, maybe it's bubble baths and going to the spa
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, oh, I love myself. And you know, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, oh, I love myself. You couldn't tell me I didn't love myself. However, now knowing what I know now, and if I could define self-love, it is a state of existence that you are in and that you have to continually practice. And
Okay.
what you're essentially practicing is it's like 5 different things. So self-forgiveness,
Mm.
self-acceptance, self-gratitude, self-trust, and then of course self-care, which I think most people kind of correlate to self-love.
Mm-hmm.
And and so a lot of people, you know, they assume like when they hear, oh, well, I don't need help with self-love, but it's really unpacking some of that inner stuff. And it's not easy work, because I've walked the path. I've gone through all of these things of walking the path of self-forgiveness on things that I didn't even know I needed to forgive, because
Mm.
that's part of that process. And I can share a short story if you
Sure.
kind of
Absolutely. Please do.
okay.
Yep.
And so with self-forgiveness, part of my journey was recognizing that there were things that I was holding on to from my childhood that I didn't realize I was.
Mm.
I didn't, in my mind, didn't have a particularly traumatic childhood, but I was bullied in like in middle and high school. And you know, when you graduate, you think, "Oh, I'm done with that. No big deal. You know, I've moved on." but I didn't realize that it left kind of some lingering damage, trauma, basically. And even though to the outside, it looked like, oh, she's fine, she's doing great things, everything appears to be fine. Deep down, even though I didn't recognize it, I was exhibiting some symptoms of how I was able to cope with the bullying when I was younger. And so what I would do when I was younger is like, okay, well, I would basically shrink myself and try to be unseen so that in my head back, as a child, I was thinking, okay, if they don't notice me, they can't pick on me. And so what happened as an adult is, even though the trauma's gone, I kind of carried that coping mechanism with me. And even though, I did what I had to do to kind of get where I am today. But there were very, very small symptoms, for lack of a better word, where I would just basically shrink. And for example, like when you were very kind in your introduction of me and all that, 3-4 years ago, I would have shrunk all that. Like, oh, it's no big deal. Like, even though I know how hard that CPA license was to earn, but if anybody ever asked me, oh, I would dismiss it and make it seem like it was no big thing. I would, and that all was rooted in me learning very early on to just shrink myself. And I would tell myself, oh, I don't want to appear arrogant. I don't want to appear like, I'm boasting and stuff like that. That's what I told myself. But deep down, when I really did the work and really thought it through and had people ask me the right questions, which is what coaching does, I recognized, oh my God, like, I can't believe I'm 36 years old holding on to things that happened, when I was a teenager. And I had no idea. And so part of the process of, going through what self-love coaching does is, we're going to talk through some of those things and figure out, even though they may, especially for very ambitious people, it may not be a loud thing. Like, you might not think like, most of us, to be honest, don't think there's anything wrong.
Right.
And so it might not be loud, but it showed up in how I was kind of presenting myself in certain situations. I would never be on like a podcast like this talking to you, like, even though it would have never been something that I could have done because I was so used to just kind of, shrinking and just, and so that journey of just uncovering that was helpful, but then also releasing that resentment that I had for myself in a lot of different ways, but also towards the people that were bullying me. And that's all about, kind of going through and walking through self-forgiveness and just releasing that. You don't realize how much of a weight it holds until you release it.
Wow.
And
yeah, that's great. That's great advice, right? And you touched on these five areas, right? So, you're really focusing on one of those right now. And how to,
that's like the first thing. Yeah, that's the first thing is to get over that. And then you can kind of build. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. And the other thing that struck me with the 5 points that you talked about is that the common thread in that is self. It's not others, right? And maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it starts with us, right? Even though you can deal or encounter people that are inspiring and things that inspire you, it starts with you inspiring you. And it's not easy to do. I don't know that it was anything I was ever taught to do. And I think that, I definitely leaned on my parents a lot, to kind of instill like a lot of the confidence and stuff and stuff like that early on. And I think sometimes you don't really get as independent as you should. You kind of lean on other people kind of boosting you up, but you have to, it starts here. It starts with you. And you're the one who has control over how your life looks.
Mm.
And so, like I said, like you said, all of these things start with self. So like if we move on to the next one, like self-acceptance, it's about not allowing yourself to stay stuck if you're unhappy. If you're unhappy with your life, if you're unhappy with your job, like self-acceptance commands that you critically say, okay, is this acceptable for me?
Mhm.
Is this acceptable? And if it's not, it's time to figure out how we need
Take
to make some
responsibility,
changes.
right? That's
Yeah.
right.
You
Yeah.
can't just stay stuck. That's not self-love. And
Mm.
so that's where self-acceptance comes in. But like you said, yes, it's really much, and it's not a selfish thing. I want to be clear. It doesn't mean that you just think
Mm.
about yourself and nobody else. That's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
But it's about kind of starting here. And so
Mm.
that you can exude that. I feel like my presence is so different than it was a couple years ago when I was going through my journey. But I feel like because I feel like I've done kind of the internal work, I feel like I exude what I feel. And
Mm.
if you're doing it whether you realize it or not, if you're not feeling good inside, you exude that, right?
Right. And I think that's right. I mean, we're getting really deep into this into what it's really like to live and to love. How can you possibly love somebody if you don't love yourself? To genuinely do it, right? How can you possibly care for somebody if you don't care for yourself? Because maybe you can do it for a short period, but it will run out of gas, for too much longer. So a lot of it, it's not selfish. And a lot of it is, if you take the word kindness, many people need to start by being kind to themselves.
Mm.
Okay. And then it becomes more natural. That's what I found anyway, to be kind to other people. Right. But it all starts, you said it, I picked up on what you said. It all starts from within, right? Each one of us. So I think acknowledging that and knowing that nobody's going to fly in and do this for you. Somebody can help you to realize it, but each one of us has to make these changes and express our emotions to ourselves, right?
Absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
that that's kind of what like that's kind of the distinction between the coach and the person that has to do the work. I can't do the
Mm.
work for you. It
Right.
is very much now I can guide you, I can hold you accountable. We can unpack some things because a lot of the sessions that I've had with people have been very emotional, because when you start asking people hard questions and they really start kind of they kind of start thinking about and putting two and two together, because it's not for me to do that. It's to
Mm.
figure out what it's to walk you through what you want your life to look like and what is acceptable for you and what you want to cultivate. I'm not going to tell you that because I don't know
Mm.
what that is. It's different for every person. But
Right.
it is very much a journey that you have to take ownership of. I think I would have benefited from having someone kind of to guide me along the way. And that's another reason why I felt like I really wanted to be a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Because I felt like that support, I feel like my lows wouldn't have been so low
Mm.
because I just would have known that that's part of the process. That you're gonna uncover some things that you didn't even realize, especially if you're in that ambitious group. Like I said before, sometimes we don't know that something's wrong. You're gonna start, stuff is gonna start slowly coming up, and you're just gonna have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Because we all have things that have affected us. No human being there's not a human being that hasn't experienced some type of hurt.
Mm.
And and sometimes we don't always process that the way we should,
Mm-hmm.
or deal with it the way we should. And we just kind of just push it down and not deal with it. And it shows up in different ways, maybe small ways, but it shows up.
Right. And I think you're right. And I think that, people should not be afraid to ask for a coach, ask for a mentor. Right. So,
Mhm.
in career terms, it might be a mentor. In life, it would be a coach, like what we're talking about, a wellness coach. Everybody, champions have coaches, right? One of my all-time great heroes is Tiger Woods, right? Tiger Woods, he's always had a coach, right? So Michael Jordan's the other one. Michael Jordan has a coach. Hey, there's nothing wrong with me getting a coach, right? So these people are superstars, and maybe they're superhuman, but they're human just like we are, and they need a coach as well, right? Because the coach can really help you with what's going on in between your ears, and to help you identify these self-realizations of things like self acceptance and things like this. Nobody should actually, let me start over. Each person should have the final say on if they're going to allow criticism from another person to impact them. Okay. So it's each person is your own boss. So the next time that you're criticized by somebody, understand that you have the power to veto that. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's non-scripted. It just popped into my head. And, it's like, don't give other people permission to run your life. Okay. But in order to actually take those words that I just said and to make it happen for you, you have to have this self-realization that your self-image and your image across these 5 areas that Ciara Lynn you're talking about, you've got to be aware of them so that you can work on them and to strengthen them. And then you can live a liberated life that's free of resistance and a lot of anxiety. And we all get anxiety, but then you learn how to deal with it better if you can master these 5 areas, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And like you said, your first point about not allowing people's negativity, for lack of a better word, affect you. I've definitely had to navigate that. And and early on, like I was very much a negative Nancy in some cases, because I hadn't evolved in that space yet. But I've also experienced it, and sometimes you almost mirror that sometimes. But I, even when I was studying for my CPA license, I remember someone that I looked up to say, "Oh, okay, well, I didn't pass, but good luck." And I was just like, honestly, it hurt my feelings to my core, because I really looked up to that person. I thought that they would be more encouraging and more, just more uplifting. And, I had to learn really quick, like, you're going to have to, don't get me wrong, surround yourself by supportive people, but just understand that everybody's not going to be supportive. Everybody's not going to, encourage you and uplift you. And so some of that, you still have to cultivate that within as well. And I had to learn that the hard way. But
yeah, I think we all have. And the other thing that I'll just point out to the people watching this, and for those that'll see it on replay, is that a coach can help you get to the points that both Ciara Lynn and I are talking about on this program much faster than you can do it on by yourself, right? So that's another advantage to getting a coach, because they've seen so many situations like this, right? That they can, and every person's different, right? But they can help save, in some cases, years, right? That's one of the things that drives me on this platform with business and career and leadership culture concepts, is that these concepts that I introduce, the same thing that you do with your clients as well, Ciara Lynn, can save people years of self-discovery, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I know, like, even, just going through my own journey, like I had a lot of, I wouldn't say roadblocks, but I stumbled a lot because there wasn't anyone to guide me. And then when I got certified, you kind of went through that path again, and I had more guidance, and I recognized, that it was so inspiring. And I've had coaches before that too. Like I hired a career coach before I transitioned here to Charlotte, North Carolina. And literally, the short story is, she helped to help me figure out what I wanted to do. And I remember specifically one question she asked me, and she said, what would you be doing and where would you be living if you could do anything and without any obstacles, without, money challenges, any of that stuff? Let's just throw all that. If you could just be anywhere and doing anything, what would that be? And when she asked me that, I could not answer the question. I was just like, and that, that ended up being my homework. And so I sat with myself and I was like, you know what? I really want to transition into forensic accounting. And, I want to move further south. And literally, once she said that, okay, let's make it happen. And what I uncovered in that process was I have a lot of limiting beliefs. I told her, I remember telling her in the process, it's like, yeah, it costs a lot of money to move though. And that's why she said, let's put all that to the side. And then she's like, well, how much does it cost to move? Couldn't answer the question. Because I was putting this stuff in my mind and essentially self-sabotaging myself, thinking like, oh no, it's too expensive to move. And and I remember her asking me, I did the research and I came back. I was like, okay, I did the research. It actually wasn't that bad. I have the money. And she was like, okay, good. So let's go through the next step. And so it was really impactful for me just going through and being a coaching client, because it helped me realize, sometimes when you're in your head and you're in your thoughts, you don't even realize you're self-sabotaging yourself. You don't even realize in the process, but when you have someone that you're telling this stuff to and they're throwing it back at you and you're like, okay, I guess that doesn't make sense. I don't know why I thought it. It really wasn't that expensive. I don't know why I told myself that and made a decision based on that. But long story short, I ended up literally, I think within a month and a half, I was packing up. I had accepted an offer in Charlotte, North Carolina in forensic accounting. And I was
there
gone.
You go. Yeah, I mean, we can either be our biggest foe or our biggest friend, right? And so I think a lot of it is, if you can learn to master these things, and I am no master. I'm not a coach, but I'm a banker, right? But I do understand. I learned early on from a mentor, by the way, that if you can master the psychology of the people around you, then you can really go places. So befriend yourself first. Okay. Then you can befriend others. Understand that your real foe, if you don't build the self-awareness, can be yourself, right? And your real competitor. And you don't want to have to compete with yourself, right? So understand this stuff, bring it to light. Ciara Lynn, I just want to acknowledge, so I want to kind of get to the live audience here. So we've got people from all over the world here. We've got people from, we've got Paul from Nigeria on, and we've got people throughout North America on. We've got Agatha. Thank you for joining. Agatha is in Zambia. Lusaka. I spent a couple of years down there with Agatha and all of the great people of Zambia. So we've got people from all over the place. If you've got questions, put them in before we wrap up. Joe Gonzalez from Florida is on, and Joe says there's 2 limiting beliefs. I'm not enough and I will never be loved. The killer of all dreams. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, those are huge limiting beliefs.
Yeah, they're yeah.
And they sound like, oh, I would never tell myself that, but we tell ourselves, like, deep down, we might not say it out loud, but there's a lot going on in here. And, of course, one way to kind of counter those limiting beliefs would be affirmations and essentially turning that into a positive. For some people that may not be enough. So that's where the one-on-one matters, because we can kind of figure out what you're going to respond to. But yeah, the limiting beliefs is something that, and I feel like you never really get over them. It's like you get over a few and then something else happens and you're like, and then you kind of, new ones kind of show up. But I think if you have the tools in place, you can kind of recognize that they're there and push through. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just pushing through, even in trying to counter, your thoughts, essentially switching them off, or in the other direction, I should say.
Yeah, you're right. Joe had also said on here that, when we were talking about other people influencing, criticizing, etc., he said, don't change your surroundings, change their role in your life, right?
Mm,
So
yeah.
I think that can definitely be a very useful and swift. If you want immediate actions, that's definitely one that you can take, right? So
Absolutely.
I
I
agree
love
with that. Yeah. And an outsider, a coach is always viewed from a different perspective than the person as well. So that's a great point, Joe, as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was agreeing. No,
Yeah.
I was just agreeing.
And Shafak, thank you for showing up. Shafak shows up to everything. I appreciate Shafak, you coming on here. He says, master the psychology of people around you can go places. So I think that's definitely something that we talked about. And if you can understand the psychology of people, it can sure go a long way. You still need to listen to them, but to kind of understand and figure out how people think, especially if you're in leadership, can go a long way towards as well. I'm going to flip over to Facebook really quick. So Agatha, thanks. Self-discovery is internal and personal. Self-love, self-trust is a state of existence. And when we stop transforming, we stop living. And well said. And don't get
Your
down
audience gets it, Brad.
Yeah, Agatha. Agatha's really got it. Don't get down when you hit a rock. Very powerful, right? And I think Ciara Lynn, you inspired everybody watching this from sharing your own story with that, as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I could have went the other way, I think.
Yeah. Hey, as we start to wrap up over the next few minutes, any questions? This is the last call for questions, so you can put them in there. But I'm just going to throw one more thing out. You're focused mainly, is it solely on women? Mainly on women? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So it's definitely, I definitely would say that I'm more focused on women. I am a woman, so I can relate.
Yep.
And particularly, with my upcoming program that I'm working on and all that, it's particularly targeted to unmarried women. And I think the reason that I've really, at least for now, targeted that sector is because I feel like it's kind of it's a big sector. It's a big enough sector, but it's also a space that I feel like we don't always have a lot of resources. And so what I mean by that is, I think as a society, we've come a long way about focus or allowing people to have flexibilities because they have families, and having that, being able to be more flexible because, you have to go pick up the kids, or you have those types of engagements. Right. But unfortunately, sometimes while we've come a long way with that, it's like, okay, so basically I would like to get off on time as well. Maybe I'm just going to my yoga class because that's a priority in my life. Maybe I don't have to go pick up the kids, but I still have priorities, right? And I think that as unmarried women, sometimes we have unique challenges that are very different. Like, there are challenges that are a little bit different than someone that is married and has kids. Those are completely different things. And so I just kind of wanted to focus on a specific area that I have a lot of experience in.
I think that's wonderful, and I elevate a lot of women on this platform, and I encourage. I know a lot of unmarried women will be watching this program, and so there you've heard it. And Ciara Lynn's available. I'll make sure that we provide information on how to reach her in the postings, etc., on this as well, if you'd like to reach out. Do you help people beyond the United States, Ciara Lynn?
I think we can make it work. I think always the time zone is the issue, right?
Yeah.
But I think we could make it work if we could find a happy medium between the schedules and all that. I'm not opposed by any
There's
means.
always a way to do that. Yeah,
Yeah, we'll figure it
that's right.
out.
Okay, good. So there you go. Because I know that would be definitely a question. Last question that I have, and then we'll wrap up, Ciara Lynn. Burnout. A lot of people, this thing called the Great Resignation. A lot of people have taken a decision. Top people, performers, right, have taken a decision that it's less risky to resign and go home than it is to work in toxic culture environments. And a lot of people have not done that yet. And they're working at home. They're getting Zoomed to death. I've been talking about this all week. And they're burning out. And one of the reasons they're burning out is they're actually working more hours now than they were before the pandemic. And they're at home. So go figure that, right? So they're stuck behind a computer screen for a long time, and they're burning out. What advice, I know everybody's different, every situation is different, but what general advice would you give people on some immediate things they could do to help relieve some of the pressure of burnout?
Ooh.
It's a loaded question, I know, but anyway, general advice.
But I will say that it's dear to my heart because, I know what that sentiment felt like. And that's kind of, before the Great Resignation, I feel like that's kind of where the space I was in. I was feeling like, or I'll say this, I know what it feels like to burn out. I burned out many, many times along my path. And it's such a unique place right now because of all of the circumstances in our with the pandemic and all that. But I will say, these are like my 3 general tips. The first one is, with the time that you do have, live in the present, live in the now.
Okay.
If when you're at work, you have meetings, try to just be in that meeting and not, what you have to do later or what have you.
Okay.
When you do get off, truly embrace that time, whether it's with your family, whatever you have going on, like put your phone away, just really be present. Because I feel like when you start to cultivate that, you are really more, you start to cherish it more, and you start to feel a lot more fulfillment from those moments than when you are just half in and half out. You're right. Thinking about what you need to do later, and you're thinking about that.
And so then it just builds up, right? It starts building up, and you're living this anxiety while you're doing something else.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that would be the first one, but kind of building on that is have a hard cutoff. And I know that is, for some people in certain industries, it's going to be difficult. You may not get off right, when you're supposed to or what have you, but try to have a hard cutoff, not have that blurred line of, you're off, but you're still kind of working, or you're still thinking about work or whatever. Like, give your brain a break. Like, just cut it off. I promise you'll feel a lot better the next day, and you can get right back to it. But like, cut it off. Have a firm cutoff. And so that would be the second thing. And then the third thing would be, when you do cut it off, have a nice transition period between, what you're cut off and what you're going to do next. Because sometimes, you don't realize how fast you're moving at work. And you're just kind of, you're just moving, knocking things out, and just having a moment to just kind of get your bearings together and just kind of downshift from all that, kind of let whatever challenges or what have you had during the day, just kind of let that to the wayside.
Yep.
And just kind of transition to the next part, whatever that looks like for you in your evening. And then truly truly embrace that time that you have. And the last thing
sure. No, go ahead.
One more thing, in addition to the transition, take your breaks. Like, we are horrible. And hey, I was one of those people. We are horrible about working through our breaks. That's why it's called a lunch break. Like truly break, don't work through your lunch. I understand sometimes things happen, but let's make that the exception and not the rule. Take your break, give your mind a break, give yourself, try to stay off your phone if you can. Actually taste your meal. I've seen people like just scour their lunch and
I know.
mindfully or just mindlessly just eat. It's like, what did that taste like to you? What did it smell like? Like activate all your senses.
They don't remember. That's right.
They don't remember.
Yeah. Feel your feet to the floor, right? I always tell people, feel the feet to the, shoes are an incredible invention, right? And a lot of shoes, right? I've got a lot of worn out shoes, but I've got some shoes that are not so worn out, and feel the pressure and the comfort of your feet to the floor. Pay attention when you're walking. I found that that's an enormous tool to get yourself focused on the present moment. Ciara Lynn, that's great. That's great advice. I want to recognize Audia Lee Ellis, who's been here and the entire time, and Audia Lee is wanting to share this. Lots of great information for a lot of people. So Audia, thank you very much for coming in and contributing. And lastly, Paul from Nigeria, my friend Paul from Nigeria. Truly excited to be here. And he now understands after this conversation that he's not alone in the pursuit for purpose after hearing you. So how's that for an impact, Ciara Lynn, as
my goodness.
as we close down? So
that
you,
is such a, that makes me want.
That's you. That's you, and that just reaffirmed my keen eye for exceptional talent. So I knew that the moment that I met and saw you. So I think that's great. We're out of time. So I'd like to, first of all, thank the participants for tuning in live. Really appreciate that. I'd like to thank those of you that are watching this or will watch this on replay over the weekend as well. And I encourage you to increase the engagement. If you'd like further questions, we'll answer those throughout the weekend. So tee those up, and Ciara Lynn, a very special thank you to you for carving time out of your 3, 4, 5, 6 jobs. Don't know, lost count, but thank you for carving time out to join us here on the program today.
Oh, thank you so much, Brett. It has been an honor. I had so much fun. And I'm so happy to be with you and everyone that's watching. Thank you so much for being here. And having and being here, with our conversation.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure we'll have you back on here. I think this was ultra inspiring, and based on the feedback that I've seen so far online, this is incredibly beneficial, especially during this stage of the world where a lot of people are going through, some uncharted territory with external affairs, that are kind of impacting everybody, mainly COVID, just to make a long story short. And that's created a lot of stresses on people. So I think a lot of stuff.
A different life. And they're recognizing this isn't.
They're human.
This isn't it. You've had time to just say, this isn't how I want my life to go. And they're trying to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah. And it's great that we have people like you that can actually help them do that as well. So I'll make sure that I get all the contact details, Ciara Lynn, on this. We'll be doing that over the next 24 hours or so that people can engage with you directly. And we'll look forward to having you on the program again soon. So thank you for that. And all of you next week, we'll be in the UK, where I will have a wonderful guest that I'll announce the details of next week on the program. And I'm sure you're going to be inspired by that as well. So thank you all for tuning in. Really appreciate it, and have a wonderful